Okay, cool. Let's start. This is the Sausage Sports Club weekly update. I do this every week for a few reasons. One is I think it's useful for students and new developers to see what it's like and what the process is of developing a commercial game. Something I feel like I didn't have as a resource while I was making this game, and so I want to kind of pay it forward since I did have a lot of help from, people who knew what they were doing to some extent. Second reason is marketing. If I talk about the game more people will hear about it. Looks like my internet's good. Got it back. Yeah, more people will hear about it if I talk about it. That's obviously good to help sell the game. Three is the selfish reason of documenting my process of making the game and how I felt about it, so that in 10 years or whatever I can look back and see like what was it like to be making that game, what did I learn, what would I do differently, stuff like that. And then the last reason is sometimes people come into chat and teach me something new, and then my process gets better. Welcome, DigiFudge. So that's why I do this. With that in mind, this week I mostly have been writing blog posts. The game is done. I'm kind of pushing on cert, pushing on marketing stuff. I'm not adding any new features. I'm like barely even fixing bugs or anything unless it's like stopping the game from getting through cert. It's at the point now where all the things coming back from Nintendo are like such minor bugs that I could say, like, don't worry about this, I'll patch it, but let me like make this the shipping version. But I still have some time before when I want to release, so I'm still like fixing little things here and there. And so I'm writing marketing stuff. Basically, I think like trailers are like the best marketing I can do, because Nintendo will help me by putting those on their social media platforms, and that's great. But I also want to do like the things that I can do myself, which is making really just good content that's like really shareable and interesting. So for that reason, I've been doing my best to write like the most useful, valuable blog posts about development that I can. I don't want to like actually go through these because they're just really long, but I can just scroll through really quick, like to show you the scope of these. Right now I've got in progress 4 different posts that are all about a different domain, like domain of work of the game. One is design, one's programming, one's kind of a mix of art and tech art, since I'm more of a tech artist than an artist. And then the last one's like biz dev and marketing, which I'm combining into one, since I'm not I'm less experienced in those roles than a lot of other people would be, and I just want to share like what I have learned in that process. So each of these is going to be between 15 and 20 minutes to read, and I'm trying to fill it with like useful GIFs and images and stuff. That's why I brought up like GIFs as a thing I want to talk about this week. So there's like tons of content in this. I'm trying to make it as useful as I can, and I still want to do another pass over this and cut any of the chaff, make it as short and as focused and concise as possible, with the hope that it's just really useful and people will find value in it, number one, and share it so more people hear about the game, number two. So this is the programming one, or no, this is the design one. And today I've been working on, here's the art one, which is mostly like, so far it's mostly shader stuff. That's where I've spent the most time. Just like breaking down all the cool effects in the game. I'm also gonna, I'm not sure what this is gonna look like yet, like how I'm gonna host this, but I want to do some kind of open sourcing of as much of the game as I can. So in addition to like showing how this stuff works, I'm actually gonna give the shader code of like the water and all these other effects, so that you can actually like play with it in your own project and use it if you want. So that's that. That's kind of what I've been doing most of this week, and I started before that. Initially I didn't know what the scope of these blog posts or whatever was going to be. I just started writing and kind of getting all the information out that I could. Hey, thanks Dobrog for hosting. And now I realize that I've ended up with just like a crazy amount of text that would never, like, if I had put it all in one blog post, it would have been wasted because it would be too long for anybody to read. So that's why I'm splitting it up. And that also will let me like do it over, like, release them over a week or however long makes sense. And as I showed, I'm using Medium just because I like the way they format their posts and how easy it is to add stuff, and it's like their platform embeds it so that Facebook and Twitter and all the other like social medias like have Medium embedded posts, so it looks nice when you share a link or whatever. I don't have to do any extra work with that. And also like a Medium link is trusted more so than like a random blog. So yeah, so progress on these, like, design is really close to finish, programming is really close to finish of these posts. Tech art, I'm still in progress. I need to expand the character and prop process more. Like, I just kind of give a brief overview in one paragraph now, and I want to get more specific. The shader stuff I think is really like lengthy and good, but still working on that. And I might have mentioned the BizDev marketing one is still kind of a rough outline, just like my first brain dump, and not actually formatted into a useful, concise presentation of that. But the kind of high level stuff is in that, like, marketing. I talk about like Twitter and making GIFs and using Imgur and other platforms and trying to like figure out what is best for your game and what worked for me and stuff like that, and how there's kind of one case study where I made this like Twitch thing to go with the Kickstarter, and I put a bunch of time into it thinking it would be like this great marketing move, like marketing stunt or whatever, and during the Kickstarter it was kind of like not that useful, but it helped the game in other ways that I didn't expect, and it gives me, like, building that tech gives me a tool I can use with launch to like make it more attractive to streamers and stuff. So kind of that was kind of a failure, but also a success in some ways. So I just think it's interesting to share that. There's also some BizDev stuff in there of like, a lot of people ask me how I hooked up with Nintendo, of getting the game on their platform and getting them to put it in their indie showcase or whatever. And so I talk about that, and related to that is like conventions and what's the purpose of conventions, and how much I spent to go to those, and why I wanted to go to those, and how to set up a good booth and all that stuff. So that's the kind of content that I'm looking to put into that one. That's, you know, all this is what I've been working on this week. With that said, the rest of this episode is going to be a little bit unusual, where I want to show my GIF making process, since I think that's something that is going to differentiate these articles from a lot of other design or programming or art blog posts, where I'm going to show GIFs like fully explaining all this stuff, whereas usually it's a lot of just a wall of text, and it's maybe less well explained. So I want to share that, and then I'll talk a little bit about like why my process is what it is, and why I don't use like the automated GIF capture tools or whatever as much anymore. And then the last thing I want to do is walk through is not the right word, like look back at old GIFs. We'll see how long that's fun to go through. Okay, here's the game. Let me open Photoshop. Cool. I'll do it's over here. Cool. So my process of making GIFs isn't especially unusual, I don't think, but it is a little less streamlined than it would be nice to have. So step one is I use Fraps or some other video editing tool to record footage. Yeah, so Fraps shows up on whatever like window holds your rendering context or whatever it is that Windows like says is the most recent updated window. I think that's how it works. And so Unity's editor can do that, or like a game can do that, or presumably any other window in Windows can be made to do that. I didn't think about what I want to make a GIF of. Let's do the hat shop sequence. That'll be a cool one. So do adventure, hat shop, side room. Let's do scout. No hat. Should pop us in there. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I just play the game. Usually it's in the editor and not in an actual build, which makes the capture resolution lower because my my editor window is like shrunk down. Whereas if it was in the actual app, it would be full screen. But for a GIF, I'm gonna shrink it way down anyway so that it works on Twitter and stuff. So it doesn't super matter. And it's probably likely that my stream is gonna lag or the capture is gonna lag since I'm doing both of these at once. We'll see what happens. Okay, so the GIF I want to capture is me unlocking a new hat. So I gotta give myself coins. I have enough. Hit record. And that's the sequence. Usually this doesn't happen in one take. I do a bunch of takes. So I'll just give myself a shit ton of coins so I can do this a bunch of times. Okay, let's do another one. Like helmet, rad. So I always like try to put on a good show for the GIF, like swinging my head around or whatever it is in your game. Yeah, fudge. GIF like animated web image, you know. Do another one. Oh, I forgot to hit record for this one. Fish, that's funny. Okay, let's do another one. Bad. Okay, so we've got a few there. Yeah, Fudge, this is a kind of weird topic, but it's, if you're making a commercial game, like, you should market it. That's a pretty important part. And being able to make good marketing materials is useful there. That one's cool. I think this might be the one that I want. Yeah, let's try that. Okay. I got my captures window open. Okay, so in Photoshop, this is my process. I use Photoshop for this. There's an import option and then video frames to layers. What this will do is turn a video into like Photoshop's internal format where you can edit it on the timeline. I think this was the one. Is this by date? Okay. Okay, so this is the thing I like the most about Photoshop versus other tools for this. It gives you this like scrubber before you even import, so you haven't spent the like shitty wait time of like waiting for the files to import, and maybe your video is kind of long, so there's a ton of frames or whatever to import. So it lets you actually like scrub through this and like see, preview what it's going to be like, so you can like make sure to only import the part you need, which for me is like here, once the UI thing goes away, and we can pushed it. Alright, cool. So we got the unlock sequence, confetti, the hat clicking on. Maybe you want the camera to zoom out a little bit before we end it. Okay, cool. And then this is the other cool thing. You can like only capture every like 1 out of every so many frames. So if I do 1 of every 2, we're gonna have half as many frames, which means the file size is gonna be half as big, but you know, your frame rate will be lower. I think we are capturing at 60, probably limited to 60. You don't really need 60 for a GIF on Twitter. Like 30 is totally convincing. It's only when you're actually playing and controlling a character that it, you know, you can definitely notice the difference between 30 and 60, but it doesn't like fuck up the game feel of a of a GIF or whatever. If you only do 30, and it makes the file size smaller, which means it loads faster on Twitter, or if you're doing like a blog post like I'm planning to do, and I want to have like 30 GIFs in it, it's better to have a lot of small files so that the page doesn't take as long to load. Okay. So we're gonna half it. Cool, this looks good. A weird thing about this GIF, so when I get to this stage now, what I'm looking at is like, okay, there's a lot of extra wasted space that isn't super important to the GIF, and I want the character and like the action that's happening to be the center of the GIF, so I might want like this window to be captured, but I don't care as much about the stuff outside that. Because in Twitter, when you're like previewing this GIF, I think it shows the first frame, and you want to see like a character's face or like some cool action thing happening. And if it's this, like, and you're gonna see it at like this size in a web page, I would rather see, you know, I'll actually do the crop because I am gonna do this. That looks good. You can move this around in Photoshop, whatever. Crop. So I'd rather see that than what I just had before. Like this right here is a better like encouragement to click and like see what this GIF is than this was, with, you know, with the Unity editor shit and like the hat shop framing. Okay, so we got that. Zoom in. And maybe I zoomed in a little bit close. Looks pretty good. So I haven't tested this with a lot of video recording apps, but it seems whenever I record with Fraps, it always imports every frame as having as taking 0.03 seconds, and that's not actually, that doesn't actually match like the time of the GIF, especially because we imported as you know, do every other frame. So I'm gonna double how long each one lasts. And this is the one thing that I actually hate about Photoshop, is when you hit play and it like plays through these, it doesn't actually play it at the speed that it will show up. And maybe there's a setting I could change, but I don't know of it now. Okay, so this is like, this is cropped to what I want it to be. It looks like there's not any frame drops in it. Cool, got my hat on. I will do save for web, and that's the actual like correct way to export it from Photoshop. So you can preview it here. And this shows like more like what the quality will be once it, what's the word? Basically Photoshop optimizes it to be exported as a GIF so that it's not like a crazy huge file size, because the quality we import it as is like the video quality, which is a way bigger file size and hasn't been compressed down to 256 colors, which is part of the format. Like the file format of a GIF requires a limited number of colors. So when we do save for web, it like compresses it, reduces the number of colors. And you can tweak that stuff here, but I usually don't. So we can see now that this is like a way too big of a GIF. 17 megabytes shows here. That's not going to work for us. So the easiest way to fix that is to resize the image. Right now it's 880 pixels, and that's good. That means we can reduce it because Twitter's optimal size is 550. And if you upload a GIF that's bigger than that, it's going to get shrunk down to 550 anyway to be like displayed in the column. So this is more representative of what we're going to get. It's a smaller export. A lot smaller, 10 megabytes smaller. Looks great. Let's save it. Cool. Don't mind my curse words here. Okay, so a key thing that I had to learn when I was doing this is before you go and upload this to Twitter, you want to like open the GIF and like check the timing of it, because sometimes your export settings will be wrong, or like your timing on frames will be wrong. So it's either twice as fast in the GIF, like when you open it, or it'll be twice as slow, or maybe you missed like frame drops in your recording. So you'll need to go back and like click on a specific frame and delete that. If it, if multiple frames here are the same, don't change at all. Yeah, that'll make your GIF look choppy and like unprofessional or whatever. That's pretty good. This is a GIF I would make. So I'm gonna tweet it, say I made this live. Alright, I tweeted it. Okay, cool. So that's my workflow. Like I mentioned, the reasons I like when you import stuff into Photoshop, like that's the optimal workflow. That's the workflow you don't get when you record GIFs. I can like change the size of it, change the length of it, pick a specific range of frames, change how many frames I want to import total, and that's really useful. If I were to use, and I'll actually show you what this looks like if I do it the other way, because this is the other way I sometimes do it. If you just want it to be fast, if you just want to record a GIF fast instead of go through that long process, lice cap is probably the next best way to do it, because it gives you this like resizable window. It's really cool. You can do any size. You can change it during the GIF. You can move it around during the GIF. It's pretty good. And I can click stuff to record. Unlock 2. And then it gives you a little countdown before you do stuff. Bar boot, cool. And you stop it. So that records a GIF. And the cool thing about Photoshop is if you already have a GIF, you can drag it onto Photoshop and it'll automatically open it with the timeline view and like show you the timing. Okay, and so we can already see like the difference here between doing these two. We can already see the difference here between the quality of these two videos. Like this one's crazy compressed. Licecap knows like we need to limit to 256 colors, and whatever algorithm it's using isn't as good as what Photoshop used. So it looks worse. The timing's not inherently worse. I framed this shot less well than I did. Like this shot is framed more poorly than when in Photoshop I like carefully cropped it to what I wanted it to be. So that's fine. But this was really fast. Like it only took the one shot and then it was ready to upload, so that's beneficial. I would say this is especially good for early development when you're just showing off like like little mechanics and stuff, because you're probably not gonna have gradients in your environment, which tends to be what creates this like bad banding effect and makes the GIF look lower quality. But if your game is like prototype art, then it doesn't really matter. You're not gonna get that banding. It's gonna look better. Let's see how big this file is too. Looks big. You can see it's 18 megabytes. Before that, like the thing that Licecap exported, which was only like 5 seconds long, which is shorter than the GIF we did through Photoshop normally, was 15 megabytes, which is already like too big for Twitter, and it's already really close to the like optimal Twitter size. So you can see there's a bunch of reasons like that kind of tool is not as good as just doing it, recording video manually and like editing it in Photoshop or whatever. So that's that. The thing I really want, which would be perfect and would remove the need of using Photoshop, is if I could use my Licecap window to like record a thing, and then once it's done, if it popped up a thing and maybe said like good recording, do you want to like reshoot or start editing or just like quick export? So I could either I know my shot was bad and I just immediately want to restart, then I click that. If I want to start editing the timeline like I showed with the importing video frames, get that kind of interface, that would be another button. Or just quick export, which does the Licecap thing of just like take whatever I had and just put it in a GIF and let me use it. That's one thing. So the Photoshop timeline, the whole thing that's good about that is you can like choose a portion of frames that's like, you get to decide when it starts from the clip you recorded and when it ends from the clip you've recorded, which is an annoying process with video because you have to open some video editing app, which is usually big and clunky and totally way bigger and more complex than what you need just for this little thing. Once you have it in this app, it needs to be easy to delete frames, add, copy frames and paste them later, or put stuff over it like a logo or a marketing image or whatever. It should be easy to reverse all of your frames. Let's say if I was making a GIF earlier where I recorded like an orbiting shot around something and then tweaking the layout of the scene and stuff, and then recording again the same shot, but I wanted to play like one way around this way and then back the other way, and it was easier to record it straight on and then reverse it than it would have been to record it in reverse. So reverse is a useful feature. Being able to merge GIFs together Like if I have one GIF that's good, looks great, and then another one that also looks great, I want to be able to put those into one GIF easily. In Photoshop, the way to do that, which sucks pretty bad, is I have to expand the canvas of this. And then let's just do, I'll just import this, I'll just double it in this other one. So for this one, so for whichever one you import, then you have to change that one to match, but have the canvas on the other side, like that. And then you select all the frames you want to copy over, do the copy frames option. Then in Photoshop, you have to select the first frame so that it doesn't paste everything after. And it gives you this pop-up. And here I want to paste over. So now it'll just play everything double. Oh, or not. Okay, maybe I need to select all the frames. Yeah, so I select all the frames. Paste frames, paste over selection. There we go. So it's in stereo now. But that process of like having to change your canvas size in both files and then copy paste is like kind of annoying. I'm not sure what the, you know, what a better workflow would be for that kind of thing, but I could, like, I wouldn't switch workflows to another thing besides recording and then using Photoshop unless it had all of this stuff that I'm explaining. That's why I'm explaining this. Yeah, the other thing, I need to be able to crop and resize, which is important for getting the right file size and getting the right framing of a shot to try to, like I said, like optimize how shareable and interesting it is at first glance. And the last thing is I need to see the size of the image when I'm exporting it so that I can say, ooh, that's too big, I need to like make more changes. Preferably before the export, since that can take, you know, like 20 seconds or whatever if it's a big GIF. And that's annoying to have to like export it, find the file in Explorer and then look at it, see the size, oop, that's too big, go back and like redo it. So yeah, those are my GIF making gripes. Okay, now let's look at some old GIFs. So maybe like 6 months ago or something, I realized I didn't want to lose all the GIFs I had of this project because they were pretty like funny sometimes and just like definitely something I would want to look back on. Let's do a grid. This looks good. No. Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure that if you looked at the URL of this, you couldn't like get to this folder. I don't really want that. Okay, so this is every file, this is every GIF I've ever made and a lot of images. Let's do last opened. The only annoying thing about this is it's not completely sorted by date. So there's some stuff that's newer that's like farther in the front or whatever. Okay. So I realized in this folder I have the first GIF that I ever made of the game. Before it was characters, before it was sports or anything, I just knew it was like a floppy sausage dude. Yeah, here. So that's the first one. They couldn't even walk yet. Yeah, totally. There's a few that didn't actually make it into my folder. Like, there's one that I retweeted the other day that's like 10 characters like all in a pile, knocking each other around. And I don't know where that GIF is. I can't find it. But I tried to save as many as I could. Here's one where I added a VR camera when I first got my Vive. And it immediately was like terrifying to have these like giant animals. I also made a version where you could kind of stand like third-person giant watching a game happen and just like swing and like hit characters around or like hit a soccer ball around. That was silly. Here's a fun one. I didn't really think of like the format of this part of the stream, but I'll try to just pick funny like old GIFs and bugs and stuff. Go through a few. This was funny. Before I put walls on this old arena prototype, balls would just fall off, and at that time, whenever a ball fell into like a destroy volume under the map, they would just respawn immediately. And so in this one, they're like, every time a ball respawns, it's like overlapping other balls, and so everything's getting launched, and so they just keep the balls just keep like unspawning and respawning, exploding out. I haven't actually looked at these in a long time. This was like when I was working on Paint Tech. This was when I was trying to make it so paint, so that the shader for the environment could either be paint or the like standard shading environment or whatever. It's not enough to just be one or the other. Oh, that was funny. You're like unpainting the map. This was trying to make the paint look specular, so it looked more kind of like viscous and paint-like. This was when I looked at Splatoon and was like very jealous of how shiny and viscous all the paint in Splatoon was, and I never figured out how to get the like along the edges of the paint in Splatoon specifically, the paint looks really like 3D and like it's up from the ground, and this specularity helps with that somewhat, but they actually do like some trick with the normals where the normals are like faked to be higher right at the edge where the paint meets like the not paint. It looks amazing, but I could never figure it out. Thanks, Sergeant Raisins. Yeah, if you like that, look forward to like blog posts I have in the works now that I'm gonna release as the game comes out, because I go even more into depth about how the tech works, and I talk about like every effect in the game instead of just a few, or I shouldn't say every piece of tech, but every like technical art thing that was cool. This was an old arena that ended up turning into the Bug Museum. It's still actually the same layout pretty much as the Bug Museum, but at this stage I wanted it to be a meat factory where in the background there would be like a meat processing plant where you would, if you followed it from right to left, it would basically be like the entire process of taking like a piece of meat and like turning it into a T-bone steak or something. I didn't work it all out because it pretty quickly became clear that I was gonna need like juicy VFX of meat getting like pounded, and it would basically be blood splurting out, and it didn't fit the like tone of the game. Neat. This was the start of the aquarium before I kind of scaled it out sideways, and I guess it's a little bit more different than that. the aquarium was built around knowing I wanted to use the squid and like the tentacles, and also having moving platforms. So this was like the first iteration of that. That's funny. VR. Here's the first camera blockers. Anything that blocks the camera in the game that needs to be there as like a collider, I guess, just fades out. It's cool. This was back when I was trying to make shadows like straight down that were separate from the like directional light shadow, because in a platformer you want to see like where you're gonna land very specifically, instead of like whatever the directional light cast shadow is. And if your directional light cast shadow is straight down, it's gonna make the environment art look really weird, because a real light in the real world is never just like a straight line down. And this used projectors, which is, I think it's in the standard assets pack, but it's really inefficient because anything that the projector hits gets drawn again with a specific shader that I think is probably like a stencil thing, where it just draws this like transparent circle or whatever texture you feed it, I guess, and like only draws it on 3D things that already exist. And it was way too expensive for the game, made it run like shit on low-end platforms, because if every character in the game was doing this projector, then the ground mesh might be redrawn. It would be drawn once, and then for everything that cast a shadow, it would be redrawn again for this projector shadow, which with 8 characters could be 8 more times, and then if you add in a soccer ball, it's a 9th time, and then if you add in 20 soccer balls, which happens sometimes, then it's like a ridiculous amount. So I had to not do that. This was like water splashing. Yeah, it was totally a draw call problem. That's funny. This was the first iteration of the overworld where I thought it would be like a lot more platforming oriented, and there was a lot more water because I wanted to use that tech more, but it ended up being that if it was like platforming oriented, then having many players playing together and sharing one camera was really frustrating, because either the camera would follow everybody and like constantly be moving as people were jumping, and therefore it would be hard to track your jumps, or it would follow one player and then one player was just fucking up everybody's jumps by moving. So it kind of had to be not as much like platforming puzzles and stuff like that. This was cool. The water has a collider on it, and when one of these spheres like enters that, it starts a water splash. It adds like a water splash to an array of active water splashes, which has like the time since the splash and the position that the splash started at, and then in the shader I like offset all the verts within a radius by like splash height times the like times sine of time, and also times the like time since the splash. I talk about that more in the like tech art blog post, but that was cool. First pass of tentacles. This was fun. This was the first time I felt good about the platforming controller, because you could have like moving platforms or change the size of stuff, and characters would be like properly affected. Yeah. This was fun. Getting these guys working for the first time, actually like being interested in players and being interested in the different like sports balls, trying to kick them. Crabby guy. Smush Tech. This was so the squid could actually like smush into stuff. Trying to remember. I think I took this gift because adding these moving platforms meant that I had to make paint work on moving platforms, which at first was a problem because the platforms weren't light baked, and that meant I needed like a dynamic object version of the paint shader, which was a pain in the ass. This was when I used Tilt Brush. No, not Tilt Brush. This must have been Oculus Medium, or no, Quill. I used Quill to like block that out for the first time. Or no, this would have been Tilt Brush, and then I switched to Quill because I wanted to do like colors and stuff. That's what that was. This is when the game got a lot more physicsy. I just started adding tons of dynamics to all the levels, which was, at this point, I decided like I'm not going to make it online, and because I'm not going to do that, I have the freedom to just make it way more physics and like way more dynamic stuff. This one's a funny GIF. Early pass at the Bug Museum, where I added warm lights, it looks like. Oh, fuck. I remember this one. I was trying to make the tentacles be more physics-based, because the way they're in the game today and the way they were before I tried this was is that they all move based on the IK completely. Like there's rigid bodies that are set kinematic all along the tentacle, but they move like in fixed update and aren't moved by the physics simulation. And this was trying to see like, what if I made them more physically simulated, so if the player walked into it, it would push it out of the way instead of the tentacles being like an immovable force, basically. And I think it is possible to do what I wanted to do, but at the time I didn't have like a path forward for that, and I still don't really, but now I know if I like really focused on it and spent like weeks trying to figure this out, that it would be possible. Interesting screenshot to upload to this folder. Oh, just like plants. I remember posting this GIF on Twitter. People were very afraid. People were offended. So this was another prototype for the overworld, where I first knew in the overworld you needed to be able to enter like interiors that would either be like the hat shop or different arenas and stuff like that. So I needed some like paradigm to interact with, basically to enter levels or like talk to NPCs or whatever it would end up being. That was the first prototype of that. I think the code that shipped is actually really similar to that. Some ice stuff that I didn't end up using. This was back when I was prototyping power-ups that would, this one too, that would make you, the ice one was a power-up that your head would become like snowy or frosty, and then if you hit somebody, they would become an ice cube and were frozen in place and could only like very slowly slide around for a few seconds before they would break out. This one was just like making you have floaty jumps. With the first version of the overworld that I planned out before starting on it, the idea was all over the overworld I would hide power-ups, and you know, you would find these and then it would like change the gameplay in some way, but it just ended up not feeling necessary, and I don't know, it just didn't really fit the rest of the design, so I cut that out. Oh, this is funny. First version of the overworld, I didn't have a model of a bush, but I knew I wanted to decorate with bushes, so I just used the trees. I ended up swapping out those trees for like tropical trees anyway. These are all from a talk I gave in Chicago about just like shaders in the game, and trying to give a beginner's intro to writing shaders and like what they could do. So it's just a bunch of like vertex deformation stuff. I only ended up using a couple of these in the talk, but this one's fun. They still do this? I don't know if these guys still do this. Oh, they do. Okay, cool. What else we got? Team select. Here's what the jungle looked like for the first time. When I first put in those models. It's so ugly. Now it looks like this versus this. It still could be prettier, but yeah, Sergeant Raisins. I think Minions Art is a really good place to learn shaders. I wish that she would also provide shader, like a shader code file specifically, because those code snippets, unless you already have the like prerequisite knowledge of what a vertex shader is, what a fragment shader is, like which syntax errors you need to worry about, it's hard to even get that like started in your project so that you can start tweaking with it. And maybe like through Patreon she provides those, but I haven't seen them. I'm a big fan of her work though. She does on her Patreon. Okay. Yeah, kudos then. Some of my favorite stuff. I appreciate how regularly she puts stuff out compared to all the other people that do shader stuff on Twitter. Bug, good. Aquarium GIF. It's interesting, not especially useful, but oh, it's interesting seeing these like old character icons because they're all like off to the side in a weird way. So it looks strange to me now. Huh. That's funny. It's clever. Oh, these are fun. These are decals that could be put on any surface and they would align to the surface based on basically a box that you would like kind of aim at the surface, and it would just project in that box's space onto the surface, so it would kind of wrap around surfaces weirdly if you didn't angle it right. It's hard to explain how that works. If you imagine like a box projected straight forward, or a plane projected straight forward from your view, and whatever texture was on that plane just like gets stuck onto the whatever objects it hits, it's like that for these, but it's the projection is from the box instead of the view. And I finally got the tech working for these in a way that I was happy with, but I am unable to use them because they require a depth normal pass, which Unity's like cameras can enable. You can do nothing, which doesn't even include depth, which is really bad. Like most games need a depth pass because it's used for shadows. And then you can also enable a depth normal pass, which re-renders the entire scene, and that gives you a buffer with the normal value for every pixel on the screen of whatever is like the highest, or the, I should say the lowest depth from the camera. It gives you the normal for that, and that's great. This is actually what that looks like. The first frame of this, like that is the depth normal pass. That's what it gives you. And you can use that effect for a lot of really cool things. Like when I project this, if I know the normal of the thing I'm hitting, then I can know like how this projected, what is it called? Stencil, is that the right word? Decal. How the decal should like match the surface. And yeah, but it's you know, it's another pass of every object in the scene, drawing them again, and that was too expensive for Switch, so I abandoned it. Double tech. These are just some new character things. This is back when I was messing with ambient occlusion, which I think also required that depth normal pass, and is why I don't use it. This is the old version of the overworld where I redid everything. I guess I mostly only redid the beach. This area is like all filled in with land now. Dialogue. How much of the cool tech did I have to leave behind for various low profile builds? There's a few. Let me grab my blog post. So I go through a lot of the stuff in this article. That one's good. So this effect, the motion smear, that's something that, well, okay, so there's two parts of this. One part is the motion smear, and then one part is that players' heads get scaled up the faster they're moving. And so like the head would be scaled up way bigger, and then the next neck transformed down would be scaled up a little bit, and the next one a little bit less, and the next one a little bit less. And that effect looks really funny and makes it really feel like they're moving a lot. And on Switch, scaling colliders, especially like in a big hierarchy like the characters are, really expensive, so I had to not do that. And the motion smear was also a little bit expensive, so I turned that off. I'm really happy with what I had, and I wouldn't change it. I think the motion smear also like made the scene and like visuals way more busy, and it's I just like kind of feel happier not having it enabled, but it's like 51% I like not having it on, basically. What's another one? This effect of geometry shader grass in the overworld, which looks like this. This is disabled on Switch, not because of performance, but just because whatever like Switch shader compiler they're using doesn't support, or I shouldn't say doesn't support, but doesn't work with the geometry shader as I had it written. It's not, it doesn't even like error and crash the app, it just doesn't work. And I'm disappointed with that one, but I couldn't, posting on their forums and stuff, nobody could figure out why, and I couldn't figure out why. And it's kind of a relatively low priority feature. This is another one with that same problem where the Switch shader compiler like didn't work in exactly the same way, and I was kind of doing a hack to make the billboarding trees work. These are just cards of trees placed in the background of Tiny Tokyo. In the shader, they just like are forced to always face the camera, so it gives the illusion that they're 3D looking. And for some reason, it just didn't completely break. It didn't cause an error. It just didn't do exactly the same thing on Switch. And so instead of investigating it more, I just disabled it. There's another thing. Oh, this one's fun. I spent a little bit of time working on tech to let players like slide around slippery surfaces, and I was kind of looking at this as like I could add a slide to the game, or just add like a fun hill or a bowl in the ground to slide around on, and there wasn't really a good place for it ever. Yeah, Sergeant Reason's the billboard thing. What it wasn't like. How do I explain this? It wasn't like the same shader that the particles used to billboard. It was something I wrote myself where I like multiply by some matrix that uses the like Unity's built-in like view projection matrix to like make sure the verts were facing the screen. And it was just like a hack in a bad way that there's just some piece of information that I'm missing where I don't know the thing that I would need to do correctly to like work on Switch. I imagine it's similar to how in some cases like shaders on Mac that do like image effect stuff will be flipped on the Y, like on the y-axis, so your screen will be rendered upside down because of some Mac like shader compiler thing, unless you add a platform if def or whatever to your shader. I think it's probably something like that. I ended up not fixing it. Here's a view of the overworld when I only had the jungle and the beach before all the other ones were there. Pretty weird. I forget. I think this one, when I took this screenshot, I was probably preparing for PAX South. Did that make sense? And I wanted to show the overworld at PAX South, and I was trying to like crunch for that, and so I filled out the hub with like under construction boxes and stuff, so I could, so if players played it, they would see that there were like under construction stuff, and they would know that it was still in progress. But it ended up being like so far before ready that I just like gave up gave up like a month before PAX even. The scope of the overworld was just like stupidly huge. Here was like me starting to work on that grass. What else we got? This is interesting. Oh, this must have been like the first pass at redoing the beach in the overworld, because this has the docks and like the rock structures and stuff. I feel that I ended up crunching. So there's two kind of crunching. One is like some people say it as like any time you spend working late hours is crunching, and then there's like crunch where you work for like many months working way too hard and you end up like fucking yourself up so that you can't work, like so that you're less productive for many months from then on. I think the former I did a lot of, and I still do sometimes, where I like, yeah, where I work late hours or whatever. The second one, I think I did that every time I went to a convention like PAX or something, because with an immovable deadline like that, if you set unrealistic expectations for yourself and don't like lock down the build early, then you end up like just working late every night for weeks at a time, and then you get to the actual convention, and like working at a convention is an 8-hour day where you're constantly on, constantly talking the whole time. And I also did conventions really badly, where instead of taking a team of people and getting like friends to help me, it was like me and one other person helping once in a while. Like they would come relieve me for a break so I could go to the bathroom or like get some food. And so it was just like I would like crunch for a week or 2 weeks or a month leading up to PAX, and then for the 3 or 4 days, depending on which PAX you're there, I was just constantly on the whole time, and then would go home, try to fix bugs that would come up in the build because I didn't lock my build soon enough, and then just like it was really bad. So I definitely crunched, but it was for conventions, not to ship the game. Yeah. And I think different people respond to it differently. Like some people will have like 6 months where they can't do the same level of quality work after doing that. I have a few friends who like shipped their game and then were just like fucked up for months after that. And I've never had that problem where I'm like messed up for many months, but I usually get like a week or two after a convention getting ready where I just like can't do any work at all, and I have to just chill out and like be outside. So I definitely crunched on this project. This is funny. I definitely also regret doing that, and see that I could have not done that if I had just like prepared for those conventions better. So I recognize that part, and I also recognize that the game would be smaller if I hadn't done that. Not necessarily worse, just smaller. So yeah, it's totally is always in every case poor project management. Yep. Big problem for me too was in making this game was that I was always working towards one of those things, and I kind of needed that to stay motivated to finish it. Like if I couldn't see another deadline in sight, I would take it easy and relax and like not work 40 or whatever hours on the game to get it done. But when you have that deadline, it's really easy to be like, well, if I want to show the stuff I want to show at that convention, I got to do this much work and like make sure it gets done. This is a good, I like this GIF a lot. This is a good example of why the motion smear was like a good effect, because it really adds to the motion and like stretching and makes it seem like you're swinging your head way faster. Now I remember the other reason I disabled the motion smear is that it always looked bad in screenshots. If I don't know if I could pause this GIF, but if you can't see it in motion, then it just looks like the character's head is like fucked up and like stretched, which was funny sometimes, but it just like didn't show well on storefronts and stuff. This is when I went through and modeled all the hats. Characters. This is one of my favorite accidents from the game. I didn't realize in making this hat that it would kind of make Allie into a dragon, but it was just cool when I noticed that. Oh, this is fun. So this is a area in the game that got cut completely. Maybe it'll come back someday, but probably not. Like in some post-release version, but there was supposed to be a room in the overworld where you could look at unlocks. Like all of the unlocks in the game would be viewable in these books that would be on different tables. So you would walk up to, maybe I have a GIF of it. The idea was you would walk up to a table, use the interact thing, and it would like pull up this book to your screen, like in your face. And then you would see this, and it would let you scroll through like all of the potential unlocks. And if you didn't have it unlocked, it would just be question marks and like a silhouette, like a black silhouette of the thing you could unlock and then a question mark. And then, so that would show you the scope of the game in case you couldn't see it from different menus or whatever. Like I don't communicate anywhere in the game how many characters there are to unlock. So having like a book where you can go see how many there are to unlock was a cool thing. Maybe here's the GIF of it coming up to your face. Yeah, so that was what it would be. And I got like decently far into making this, but there were still problems, and one of the key feature that made me really want this room is that it would let me add a second layer of unlocks where for every hat that you got, it would let you, there would be like a challenge for you to complete that if you did it, you would get like the level 2 version of the hat, which would just be a golden hat. And that challenge would be like basically like in-game achievements like the new Mario has, but with a reward that's more than a star. It would let you like have a customization that's golden now. So it's like a new avenue of progression basically. But like the new Mario, it would just be like get some stat to a really high number. So like jump 1,000 times or like kick 1,000 players or whatever. And some of them would be easier to do, and so you'd get them over time, like beat adventure mode once, beat adventure mode 3 times, beat adventure mode 5 times, whatever. Or like play a dozen soccer matches, play 50 soccer matches, play 100 soccer matches for the different hats, and the cooler ones would be harder to unlock. And I really like this idea, and I still think it's awesome, but at that point it was just like I really wanted to finish the game and I didn't have time to do it, so I kind of threw it away. I also didn't have a clear theming of like this area. So that was a thing. I guess this was the finale when I started building that. What else we got? I think I'm gonna end the stream in like 15 minutes, around 7:30. It's fun to hang out and look through these GIFs, but I am gonna run out at some point. Nice chicken hat. Oh, these were from. I was starting to add physics to some of the hats. I knew I wanted that to be built in. You can kind of see some of the fruit are like jiggling a little bit. Chicken hat, like the sides jiggle. First bad pause menu. Oh, I know what that is. It's a bug. What's this? Oh, nice, a blend shape for book closing. So it's just showcasing the camera. Here's where I got the train working in Tiny Tokyo. This was a fun GIF. Here's the overworld. How to describe this stage? Basically the whole time I was making the overworld, I was fighting to make the trees in the jungle look good and like not take a crazy long time to light bake and to render okay on Switch. And it honestly took like 6 months on and off of just like trying different things. Like I tried LODs, I tried making like a low poly version, and that was just the default and it looked worse. I tried on the leaves in the let's do it here. Yeah, I made it so they're not transparent and that the like details are all modeled in, and that ended up being what I'm gonna ship. And that was like useful to fight overdraw, but as soon as I added this version, it was like, okay, instead of overdraw, now I'm dealing with like there being too many polygons in the scene, and that was annoying. Should have fighted a lot. And I think at some point I was like, I had LODs on and I was doing this like high poly thing, and if you're trying to like blend smoothly between two LOD levels, that means that both levels are on at once as you're blending, which meant I was rendering like twice as much stuff for any of the trees that were kind of in the in-between zone of blending. And that was when I would, in that area where if you're here, how can I say this? From here, from like standing right here in the world to up to like here, that whole time, if you're moving, some number of trees are in that in-between zone of like 2 trees are being rendered at once to blend between them. And it took me so long for some reason to realize that. And so if I just didn't render 2 sets of lots of trees, some with overdraw, some with like a lot of polygons, then it was just fine. Like I didn't need to have LODs, I didn't need to have this crazy number of polygons. I just needed to not have 2 sets of trees, 2 sets of like 70 trees or however many there are, all active at once. Super annoying. in these posts I'm making to like release with the game, other than the billboarding trees, I don't talk about trees at all because I don't feel like I came up with a good solution to this problem. I just feel like I squirmed through it and like survived, and I just don't want to talk about it. This was cool. For the train track, I use Maya's like spline thing so that I could take this. Wish I could pause this, but I can't. I took one chunk of this. You can see it's like cut up. There's a bunch of edge loops in it, but I took the front and modeled that and was like, okay, I want this to be like wrapped around this entire spline of this arena. This thing. Just because it's like, this is the perfect use case for a spline where I want this like specific shape to like wrap around the whole arena and like be bent, but not have to like do the shitty work of like moving verts around specifically to match this shape. So I use the spline for that. This was trying again with the stencil thing. The projected shadows or whatever that I was talking about. This was a super sucky process. All the buildings in Tiny Tokyo are destructible. Is that right? Did I delete the ones that aren't? I think I did. I did, cool. Yeah, so for all the destructible buildings, I wanted them to split into like real good looking pieces instead of just like a particle effect or whatever else. That probably would have been easier, but so I had to manually cut these up, and it's hard to tell from this, but these buildings aren't just cubes with like a texture on it. They're actually like the windows are like modeled in. So cutting these up into like clean polygon shapes that aren't crazy high poly was such a pain in the ass. I think that's pretty much all the good stuff. This process. Wow, it's so hard to see the difference. I guess when I started going through these, I skipped a lot of things. Yeah, I skipped to like here. So the rest of the stuff up at the top is either really, really old or really, really new. This is from the trailer. SSC, S2. What does that mean? Is that a sequel? So this GIF was so much work to make that you can't see at all because recording in slow motion in Unity is fine because you can slow down the time scale and then speed it up in the GIF, if that makes sense. And then it'll look like you have very many frames, like more. That makes sense. But for this game specifically, it didn't work that way because of how the physics engine works and how the like floppy headed, the floppy physics is like kind of a result of a bug. Not a bug, but like just it's the result of how a physics engine works, where because each collision pair happens one at a time and it doesn't like the whole body isn't resolved at once, it's resolved like one piece of the neck versus another piece of the neck, then one piece of the neck versus another piece of the neck, and all those happen in sequence, which makes them affected by previous resolutions, if that makes sense. So if like this piece of the neck and this piece of the neck are like fixed, then when the next two go to resolve, they're going to be like resolved based on what already happened in the previous resolution. What that means is that the time step and like how fast the game is running is like directly affected, or directly affects like how the physics flopping feels and stuff. So to get the characters to flop in slow motion so that I could record the flopping at a high enough frame rate that I could do a slow-mo GIF, I had to make a replay system that records everything in the scene that matters, position, rotation, and then like be able to play that back smoothly at the same frame rate, or you know, interpolate so that I can play it back at any speed, which was a lot. Was a lot of work that ended up not being in the game in any way. Like at the time, I wanted it to be a Rocket League or Towerfall style replay system, so you could like see the result of the like last 20 seconds or whatever leading up to the end of the match. So you could see the intense moment and like know where you went wrong and what, like, see from the gameplay like what you should have done differently. That's one of the reasons I think Towerfall is so successful of like engaging players to keep playing, is that you can see what you did wrong again instead of having it like lost to time. Instead of saying like, oh, you didn't shoot me, that was bullshit, that was a bug or whatever, you can see it again, you can see exactly what you did wrong. And I wanted to do that, but it was like too technically challenging. So I had to make my engagement through like unlock systems. I had to encourage engagement and playing more through unlock systems and customization and stuff like that. Anyway, this GIF was a lot. It took a lot of work that got kind of thrown away. Some really embarrassing UI. Back when the UI and the score was like a third of the screen. Fourth of the screen, I guess. This thing lived in the project for a long time and had there were different ideas about how to use it. Like when I was trying to prototype power-ups, if you ate this, you would catch on fire, and then hitting people with your head would kick them in the same way that kicking them does. But I ended up not using that power-up because even with that power-up, it was still easier to kick somebody than it was to hit somebody with your head. So it just like wasn't that useful. But it seemed like this was a good way to like give power-ups, or like be like a smash ball in Smash. Lots of hats. What's this? That's fun. Here's a GIF from YouTubers playing the game and having fun. Wonder what this actually is. So that was during the Kickstarter. Yeah, it doesn't look good in retrospect. Like in this context of just swinging your head, not like running around, it looks weird. Ha. This was before I made it so it was like scaled how far you would smear by how far away from the move direction. Okay, here's how I'll explain it. Like, if I'm moving my hand like this, I only want the back side of my hand to smear. I don't want the front side to smear. And in this GIF, I didn't scale how far you get smeared by the angle away from that like negative move direction. Does that make sense? So like this is less, this angle from my hand should get moved less than this one should, because this is less the opposite of our move direction. But I didn't scale that down. It was just either you're far enough away to get moved or you're not, which would be like here or something. So that creates this weird like derpy looking effect for that. I thought this was very funny at the time. That's another bug. Eat stick. .gif. This was just like testing a shader that. That's a bad use of it. Basically, some of the hats have their color changed based on what team you're on. So if I'm on the red team, I want my hat to become red so that I'm not confused by seeing a blue helmet on my team. Or like if I'm on the red team and my helmet's blue, that's going to confuse me and make me think I'm on the blue team. That was kind of an affordance of hats that I found, is if I colored them a color that was a team color, which because there was up to 8 teams is most of the colors that I could use, I needed to like change it. And I do that just by having a separate texture that's a mask of what parts of the hat texture should be like, what's the word, tinted by the team color. That's a thing. Here's an artifact of the old character select that's dead now. Yeah, I guess this shows the flow of it. So you would join, you have to pick your team, then you have to pick a character, which meant you have to scroll through all the characters and all of their skins, which meant that you had to make a educated choice between like a yellow scout, a pink scout, a black scout, and a brown scout, which doesn't matter unless you care about your skin. Man, that UX was so bad. This is from the Twitch integration thing. There's actually still a good number of these to go through. I think I'm gonna call it though. Maybe I'll go through a couple more of these next week. Whoops. Alright, cool. I hope this has been a good stream. I hope it's been interesting to walk down memory lane and hear about my GIF making process. I could do more of that, like marketing, like prepping marketing assets and stuff, if anybody's interested in that, since that's a lot of what I'll be doing now. I'm also going to be going through the process of preparing a build for Steam with achievements and trading cards, so if that's something interesting, come back to that. How'd you enjoy Sergeant Reasons? Yeah, I'm excited about these posts. It'll be fun to share those. It's been really cathartic to work on them, just because I've been working on the game so long, and having stuff down on paper like really shows how much I've learned over the course of this project, which is cool. So, okay, yeah, thanks for hanging out. See y'all next week, next Sunday. Cheers. Enjoy that E3. Heck yeah. Ooh, stop.